The public is being conditioned to watch the skies for missiles. Media reports focus on kinetic threats, U.S. personnel evacuated from bases, presidential warnings against executions in Iran. This is a deliberate misdirection. The kinetic cost of a conventional war is prohibitive for a cornered state. The true vector of attack is not explosive, but silent. The global financial system is not housed in vaults. It exists as light pulses within a few hundred undersea cables. Analysts at CSIS confirm these choke points represent a catastrophic single point of failure. A targeted severance, a non-attributable event in the Atlantic abyss, is not an act of war. It is a strategic attack on market solvency. It's a protocol designed to trigger a liquidity event far exceeding the recent volatility that sent silver to record highs. The second vector is orbital, satellite blinding. The recent Iridium Shield contract with the U.S. Missile Defense Agency is not a sign of strength. It is a documented admission of extreme vulnerability. It is a failsafe, a last-ditch communication network for a scenario where primary military constellations have been neutralized. The objective is to create a blind Leviathan, a superpower with unparalleled kinetic force but no sensory input, operating on a launch-on-warning hair trigger. This asymmetric protocol is the mathematical endgame for a regime facing internal collapse, as seen with over 2,400 protester deaths. Lacking conventional options, the strategy is to sever the central nervous system of its adversary. This transforms a regional defeat into a global systemic liability. The choice is no longer about winning a war. It's about forcing the world to choose between intervention and contagion. They are not threatening a battle. They are threatening the grid itself. Conflict is not a function of strength. It is a mathematical byproduct of insolvency. A regime does not escalate because it is powerful. It escalates because its domestic balance sheet is collapsing. CSIS analysis on the Ukraine conflict frames it perfectly. A kinetically expensive and unpopular war creates a terminal domestic liability. The state's survival becomes contingent on externalizing this crisis. This is not theory. It is a protocol. When internal dissent requires the liquidation of over 2,400 of your own citizens, as reported in Iran, the regime is no longer politically solvent. It is cornered. Its leadership faces a zero-sum choice: collapse internally or force an external systemic crisis. This isn't malice. It is a calculated survival mechanism. The pivot to asymmetry is not a choice. It is a necessity. Conventional military engagement against a superior adversary is fiscal suicide. Advanced defensive networks, like the Missile Defense Agency's Shield contract with Iridium, render direct kinetic attacks a low-probability, high-cost venture. The math dictates a different vector of attack. Weakness forces the insolvent state to weaponize the global system itself. The objective shifts from winning a regional war to making its defeat an unacceptable global liability. The goal is to trigger contagion. This can be achieved by threatening critical infrastructure, like personnel at major U.S. bases, or by engineering shocks in commodity markets, creating events like the Bright Crisis that sent silver to historic highs. The adversary is then forced to choose costly intervention or systemic financial chaos. Your solvency is now their leverage. The central equation of modern conflict is an asymmetric cost-benefit analysis. A Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, report quantifies this vector. A $5 million main battle tank can be neutralized by a $500 first-person view drone. This is not a balanced exchange. It is a systemic solvency crisis for any conventional military power. This 1,000-to-1 cost disparity in kinetic exchange is the engine of what strategists term the democratization of violence. The term does not imply populism. It signifies the collapse of the barrier to entry for projecting lethal strategic force. A state actor facing internal dissent, such as the unrest in Iran, where reports indicate over 2,400 protesters have been killed, lacks the economic or political capital for conventional warfare. Their launch-on-warning protocol is not nuclear, but economic. They are mathematically incentivized to leverage low-cost, high-impact systems that force a superior adversary into an unsustainable expenditure pattern. The adversary's response validates the model. The U.S. Missile Defense Agency's SHIELD contract with Iridium is a multi-million-dollar attempt to create a defensive screen against this very threat. For every dollar the cornered state spends on offense, the superpower must spend thousands on defense. This is a blueprint for bleeding a global power, not on a battlefield, but on its balance sheet. The subsequent market shock, evidenced by silver surging to a $92 all-time high amid geopolitical stress, is not a coincidence. It is the financial recognition of a new, lethally efficient economic protocol. The travel warnings issued for territories like South Africa are not humanitarian notices. They are market signals. They delineate the operational theaters, the gray zones, where the next phase of economic warfare will be staged. These regions of escalating internal instability are being designated as proxy laboratories. Their systemic weaknesses are not the cause of global risk. They are the chosen vector for its transmission. The calculus is brutally simple. A regime facing an existential solvency crisis, such as Iran, with over 2,400 protesters reportedly killed, loses the capacity for conventional warfare. As regional powers urge against a kinetic strike on its territory and adversaries like the U.S. Missile Defense Agency, award contracts for advanced shield systems with partners like Iridium, the mathematical incentive shifts. Direct confrontation becomes a guaranteed loss. The regime's survival protocol is not to win a war, but to make its regional collapse a global liability. The objective is to engineer a contagion event. We have already seen the blueprint. A supply squeeze in a critical commodity, as noted when silver surged to $92, driven by factors including China curbs and supply squeeze. The goal is to replicate this volatility, weaponizing a nation's instability to sever a critical node in the global supply chain. This is asymmetric escalation. Instead of firing a missile that can be intercepted, the protocol is to fund and accelerate chaos in a gray zone nation that is critical for a specific industrial resource. The resulting disruption appears organic, a symptom of local instability. For the aggressor, it offers perfect plausible deniability. For the global system, it triggers a solvency crisis in the commodities market. CSIS analysts project this is a launch-on-warning protocol for economic defense. The moment a cornered state perceives an imminent threat, it will activate assets within these pre-staged proxy laboratories. The adversary is then forced to choose: intervene in a chaotic, foreign quagmire to secure the supply chain, or allow the economic contagion to spread. This isn't a prediction of war. It is a description of a trap that has already been set. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not a strategy. It is a mathematical protocol. Upon detection of an inbound missile launch, you fire your entire arsenal before the enemy's warheads arrive. Waiting for confirmation of impact means your own silos are empty craters. It is a system designed to guarantee mutual annihilation by removing human hesitation from the equation. Now, introduce the fog of digital war. An adversary executes a coordinated cyber attack, blinding your early warning infrastructure. Your satellite feeds cut out. Your ground-based radar screens go black. The commander is now operating in a data vacuum, forced to answer a fatal question. Is this a technical glitch, or are enemy missiles currently 30 seconds from impact? This is no longer theoretical. The U.S. Missile Defense Agency has already awarded a contract to Iridium for the SHIELD program, source number 3. This is a kinetic cost, a direct expenditure to harden satellite command and control against the exact vector we are describing. CSIS analysis confirms that an adversary's primary asymmetric leverage is not in matching warhead for warhead, but in corrupting the data that precedes the launch decision. A cornered regime is the most predictable accelerant. With reports of over 2,400 protesters killed inside Iran, source number 1, and U.S. personnel being urged to evacuate regional bases, source number 2, the conditions for a solvency crisis are in place. When a regime cannot win a conventional conflict, it is mathematically incentivized to transform its regional defeat into a global liability. Blinding the enemy creates that liability. The final objective is not military, but economic. The market's reaction to uncertainty, evidenced by silver's surge to a $92 all-time high on supply and geopolitical fears, source number 4, is a mere preview. The fog of digital war is the ultimate economic weapon. It doesn't need to trigger a launch, only the possibility of a launch, to initiate a global liquidity crisis. The true first strike in the next war will be a no-signal message, and the first casualty will be the solvency of the global financial system. The calculus is not complex. A regime facing a terminal solvency crisis, evidenced by the kinetic liquidation of over 2,400 internal protesters, has crossed a threshold. According to CSIS analysis, when conventional military options are nullified by hardened defenses like the Iridium SHIELD contract, the strategic imperative shifts. The protocol becomes asymmetric. The objective is no longer victory, but contagion. The goal is to export the domestic collapse, transforming it into a systemic liability for the adversary. The target vector must be a pre-existing vulnerability with global reach. The surge of silver to a $92 all-time high, driven by supply chain fractures and central bank policy, is not a market anomaly. It is a targeting indicator. Within the next 12 months, anticipate a critical data integrity failure at a major commodity clearinghouse. This will not be registered as a cyber attack, but as a catastrophic settlement glitch, specifically targeting silver futures. Billions in physical settlement will become impossible, triggering a launch-on-warning liquidity crisis. This is not the main event. It is the calibration shot.